Hi, I am Dr. McHale, and I'm Canadian by descent, and you might be too. I just wanted to clarify one particular point relating to archival research, reaching out to an archivist, whether that is a library archive or a parish or diocese, church, state, county records, to ask for them to find if there is a record for your ancestor. Let's say you're looking for a baptismal record for 1861 for Eliza Jane Johnson in, I don't know, Hamilton, Ontario. At April, or maybe at St. John's Anglican Church outside of Hamilton, just to pick some names. And you ask the archive, what you want is to find your ancestor's baptismal record. But be careful about what you ask for, because they might answer that literally, which isn't necessarily the thing that you're actually the result or the information that you're actually looking for. So, for example, if you say, we would like you to check the 1861 baptismal records for St. John's Church, and I'm looking for Eliza Jane Johnson. Can you find that? They'll say, okay, I will check that and respond back. And then they respond back to you. I'm sorry, I was unable to find anything for Eliza Jane Johnson at St. John's, Anglican Church outside of Hamilton for 1861. And you say, well, shoot, that's it. We didn't get it. It's not there. Not so fast. That doesn't mean that it's not there. That just means the parameters, the search parameters as defined that you gave to the archivist to go and look did not match any results. That doesn't mean that the results aren't there. Here are a couple of possibilities that I've seen. Eliza Jane Johnson may have been baptized at a different church, but more likely, if you know it's probably that church, it probably is that church. But here's something you might not be aware of. If Eliza Jane Johnson was indeed born in 1861, she may not have been baptized until 1862 or sometimes even 1863. Of course, all bets are off if the family moved anywhere in that period. Let's say she was born, they moved, and then she was baptized elsewhere. Or she was born elsewhere, moved here, and then was baptized. There might be some complications there. But let's assume that the family stayed stable where they were. Oftentimes, baptisms happen within a few days, but sometimes, and in some areas, quite often, the baptism doesn't happen for a few months or even a year or more, because in certain areas, the minister, the Christian minister or priest of that denomination in that area wasn't stably located at one church, or perhaps they were between ministers at the time. So that means that a minister or priest riding on a circuit or moving from parish to parish, church to church, might baptize kids only every so often in a particular location, kind of batching them all at once. That's one aspect. So you might not have the baptismal record in 1861, but the one you're looking for might have happened in 1862. To complicate matters further, Eliza Jane might have been baptized in 1861 or maybe even 1862, but it wasn't recorded for one reason or another until 1863. Or rather, it was written down on the personal notepad of the individual, maybe their small private record book, that would then be transcribed into the more formal, official record keeping archival style book. And the scribe, the assistant who has that job of transcribing that, say at the end of the year, every year, overlooked an entry or two. But then they discovered their error and had to take that entry and rewrite it and write it into the official register. This is what I've seen firsthand in my own family, is that the baptism happened, say, in 1861, but it gets entered a year and a half later, not because it took place later, but because they forgot to enter it in its proper place, and they had to enter it in further down at the next available open slot on the register, and they just backdate it with an arrow pointing that it should be up in this area here. But in other words, it's simply not listed in chronological order. Now, if you gave the archivist the specific directions to look for 1861, it's not going to show up there, even if it happened in 1861. Number one. Number two, it might not have happened in 1861. It might have happened in 1862. If you give a specific date, like July 27th, it might not have happened in July. It might have happened in August. It might have happened in December. And it might have happened in the following year. So the general best practice is to ask for a range. Also, you should indicate we'd be interested in finding other siblings. Are there records of older sibling or younger sibling being baptized at this church as well? Because if there's a record of an older sibling and or a younger sibling, but no record of the individual in question, that should raise some other inquiries in our mind. The first of which, and most likely, is that that register is there, but it got overlooked because archivists, especially these days, are really good and really overworked people. And so whenever possible, I like to ask for a scan or a photocopy or even a snapshot with their mobile of the pages in question for those time frames. So I would ask for January 1861 all the way through the end of the year in 1862, maybe even 1863, to see if I could get a hold of the actual records themselves and see if the name maybe is entered elsewhere, backdated or in between lines or scribbled in a margin, because sometimes that's what happens. So when you ask for archivists, ask archivists for specific records, be careful what you ask for, because that might be what you get, and it might not be wide enough parameters for what you're really looking for.